12,000 years ago, three men walk through an unfamiliar valley. They're hungry. They come across a bush covered in vibrant crimson, succulent berries. The kind that make you feel like they want to be eaten. The first man steps forward immediately. He smiles. "Food," he says. No hesitation, no questions. He eats. The second man pulls back. Nothing this easy is safe. He won't touch it. Not now, not ever. The third man pauses. He doesn't trust the berry, but he doesn't reject it either. He studies it. He looks at the leaves. He crushes it in his hand. Smells it. Then he watches. The first man begins to sweat. Then collapses. The berry is poison. The first man perishes. The second man folds his arms. "I knew it," he says. The third man kneels beside the bush, not in fear, but in focus. He breaks another berry open. He notices the seeds, looks at the pulp, smells, looks at the reaction that it caused, and he says something different. Now we know. What was the difference in the way the three men handled uncertainty? Let's reset. Let's go back 12,000 years again, but this time, each of our three men form tribes that follow their respective ideals. The first man's tribe moves fast. They discover food quickly. They're dauntless. But over time, they repeat mistakes. And they run into things that otherwise would have been easily preventable. They suffer avoidable losses. Their growth is inconsistent. Luck becomes a driver in their success. The tribe is inevitably, best case, unstable, and worst case, extinct. The second man's tribe moves carefully. They avoid risk and reject the unknown. This, of course, protects them. They avoid many dangers that others would have fallen into. But over time, they miss opportunities. They fail to adapt to change. Their world becomes smaller while the world around them expands. Inevitably, they become irrelevant. The third man's tribe moves deliberately. They don't rush. They don't assume. They test. Sure, they fail, but they remember their failures. And when they succeed, they refine. Over time, their mistakes decrease and their collective knowledge compounds. They do not avoid risk, they manage it. Over time, they advance. What was the difference in how these tribes managed uncertainty? Every one of us has been all three men. Every one of us has been a part of all three tribes. At first glance, the second and third man appear to be the same, but they're not. One avoided the risk, the other sought to understand it. And that small difference is the essence of skepticism versus cynicism. Let's pause a moment. I want to emphasize that the cynic is not the villain in my story. In fact, the cynic is often more correct more quickly than others. The cynic has seen promises broken. They have seen systems fail. And they have seen people say one thing and do another. Their experiences force a fundamental change to their perspective. They stop assuming the best and prepare for the worst. This learned perspective, is it useful? And what is the effect of it over time? The perspective that you maintain, whether trusting, skeptical, or cynical, will affect all aspects of your life. Whether it be social interaction, politics, science and technology, or love and relationships. When you meet someone new, do you immediately trust them? Do you immediately assume that they're playing an angle on you? Or do you think to yourself, I need to get to know this person? The cynic is often right that not everyone is trustworthy. But if you always assume that everyone is untrustworthy, surely you won't be betrayed. But you will miss the connections in life that make life worth living. Cynicism practiced socially will ultimately prevent you from being deceived, but it will also prevent you from being known. The political cynic, the wisest of us all, some would say. Have we not all seen political leaders break promises, say one thing and do another? So the cynic says the entire system is corrupt. Throw it all out. What does the cynic see that we may not? Incentive behind decision, the power behind a message, possibly. What is the value of being a political skeptic versus a political cynic? Well, I would say that a political cynic will maintain engagement with a problem long enough to change it. The pitfall of political cynicism is disengagement over time and ultimately apathy. Political skepticism will take work, lots of it, but that work is necessary to ensure that the system that we have is representative of the people's will. Now let's talk about science and increasingly AI. The skeptic and the cynic start in the same place. They don't accept things at face value. Our world is flooded with information, AI slop videos, biased research. To question, to doubt, is a good thing. The scientific cynic and skeptic will generate value in catching flawed studies, conflicts of interest, and identifying questionable motives that may exist behind research. What is the line between the scientific cynic and skeptic? The cynic assumes that all studies, all models, all research, all hypotheses, all new technologies are flawed. What's the result of that? From these assumptions, understanding becomes stagnant. Useful tools are dismissed and new developments go unconsidered. To sum the argument of scientific skepticism versus cynicism, I would make a claim. The most disciplined expression of skepticism is the scientific method. Let's talk about something more personal. Love, relationships. How does one become a cynic of love? Broken trust, failed relationships, promises that didn't hold out. At some point you believed, but it didn't work out. So you adapt to protect yourself emotionally. To the benefit of the cynic in these relationships, you probably notice patterns of behavior first that others wouldn't. You're going to notice inconsistencies. You will notice the red flag first. You will be less likely to be manipulated, sure. Ignore a warning sign of troubling behavior and stay in an unhealthy relationship. But ultimately the cynic will hold back emotionally. They're going to test instead of trust because the expectation is failure in the relationship. The conundrum of the cynic's efforts is that the actions they employ to protect themselves will likely create the outcome that we all hope to avoid, a failed relationship. Finding love will require vulnerability. The skeptic understands the emotional risk, but still gives love a chance. There is no version of finding love that comes without risk. I will let Alfred Lord Tennyson close this section. "'Tis better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all." 12,000 years ago, 3 men stood in front of a berry. One accepted it, one rejected it, one sought to understand it. Those 3 men still exist today. They're in this room. Today we face different berries: technology and AI, divisive ideals and politics, complex socio-cultural interactions. But the choices available to us have not changed. Do we accept without thinking? Do we reject without understanding? Or do we learn from the uncertainties presented to us? I urge all of you, do not stop questioning. Do not stop learning. Because the future will not be built by those who always assume, nor by those who always dismiss, but by the skeptic who is willing to find out. Thank you.